I'm glad you came to learn a few tips. Um, I don't have a lot of fancy slides. I prefer to keep this more of a discussion, if that's okay. So I'm going to be asking you folks a lot of questions. But before we dive into the topic of the day, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself and what maybe makes me qualified to speak to you today. I live in Miami, Florida, but I used to live in Toronto. I moved here 6 weeks ago. So what do you think of my hometown? Pretty good? Nice place to visit? Weather's pretty good? A little hot, I'm not going to lie. But I actually spent most of my career in the Toronto area, Canada. I spent my career there. I've worked for different organizations. A little bit about my personal history first. I'm a big hockey fan. Surprise, surprise, from Canada. Toronto Maple Leafs got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. I'm still mourning. I'm a new Miami Dolphins fan. My new hometown. So I love football, and I'll be cheering for the Dolphins. I've got a family, a wife, and two amazing kids, and I'm also a musician. So I like to sing and play guitar. In fact, I usually tell people that I'm a musician and this tech thing's just a side hustle for me. So, I'm still waiting for my big break. Maybe I'll pack it in and go on a world tour soon. But that's a little bit about my personal life. But I'll tell you about my career. Obviously, Ingram Cloud executive right now. I've been with Ingram Micro about 6 years. When I joined Ingram Micro, I ran the Canadian cloud organization for 5 years, and I stepped away from that to join our Cloud Blue, our platform business, for a brief time. I was a North American sales leader, but I wanted to come back to the channel. It was a more familiar business, so much growth, so much excitement happening in Cloud Channel right now, and you guys are all proof of that. And so I had an opportunity to join the U.S. business and relocate to Miami, and it's been fantastic ever since. But what about before Ingram? Well, I've worked for a number of big tech companies up in Canada. So TELUS, a big telco up there. Some of you guys are probably familiar. I also worked for EMC prior to Dell EMC acquisition. I also started my career in the office automation business, working for Ricoh. So I've got a lot of that kind of big corporate experience before joining Ingram. But that's not really what you guys are here to learn about. You guys are most interested in my career as the president and founder of Eternity. This was a company that I founded in 2004 in Canada and built it up to be a recurring revenue cloud services business. We were selling cloud services before it was even called cloud. So we I wouldn't say invented it, but we were doing it way early on. Got into that recurring revenue business model that we all love now. Built up a successful organization, and I sold that company to a big $1 billion US cloud services organization called J2 Global. So I exited the business in 2013, sold it to J2. Stayed on with J2 for a couple of years to both transition my company, but also help them spearhead some other acquisitions in Canada. We were the first Canadian acquisition for that company, and so helped them kind of get established there, and eventually left and then joined Ingram Micro, and this is where I stand today. So what I hope to do with you folks is share some of my wisdom from going through that whole experience of selling my company and some lessons that I learned along the way, to hopefully give you some guidance and tips if and when the opportunity arises for yourself. So show of hands in the audience here. Who has been through the experience of selling their own company in the past? A couple of folks, okay. Who has acquired companies in the past? Okay, a little bit of experience. Show of hands, who has a strategic plan to at some point exit the business and sell to somebody in the next 5 years? Hence the reason that you guys are in the room. Perfect. You're my perfect target audience here. Okay, hopefully I can share some wisdom with you that will maximize the sale of your business when the time arises. So what I've done is put together some tips. I got 6 tips for you to consider as you're kind of building up your company and formulating your exit strategy. All right? And so the first tip I want to share with you is establish your goals. So I get it. I had never sold a company before either. The whole thing was brand new. When I went through the experience of selling my company, we probably had 4 or 5 different opportunities, right? 4 or 5 different companies approached us to acquire us. And we didn't really have the plan, but we figured it out quickly, right? And so when I say establish your goals, this is what I'm suggesting you do. Rather than wing it, you bump into somebody in the bar who seems like they want to buy your company. I'm asking you to plan this in advance. All right, so literally it's sitting down by yourself and jotting down some bullet points. What does the perfect sale look like for you? All right, what's your desired price? Obviously, the price has got to be right. The dollars have to make sense. But beyond that, that's the easy part. Do you want to stay on and continue to run the company after you get acquired? Or are you looking for a quick exit? Right? Very important decision that you got to make. Sell it and go, or stick around and continue to run it. Another scenario. You want to stay on as the leader of the new company or disappear? Another thing you got to consider. You've built up a company with a number of employees. Is it important to you that your employees go along with the sale of your business to the new company? Or are you comfortable with your staff getting let go post-acquisition? And finally, are you selling the entire company or maybe just a portion of your business? You don't have to sell the entire thing. All right, so establish your goals. What are you looking for? I'm telling you to do this in advance because there's all different ways that you can sell your company. There's not one single formula that works. It's all about how the negotiations go. It's all about how the acquiring company sees your business and what they're trying to achieve as well. So kind of figure these things out in advance before you enter into any negotiation, because once you figure out what your perfect scenario looks like, then any discussion that comes along the way, you just compare it to what your ideal state is, and it's either a match or it's not. Does that make sense? You guys have any questions about this first tip? How many of you guys in the audience have already done this? So if you've been thinking about selling, you're waiting for the opportunity, how many of you have actually kind of gone through this exercise? Okay, I got one, couple, yep. Do you guys agree this is a good place to start? It's a lot easier when you kind of have an idea in advance rather than being under the gun to make some of these decisions. Any other questions? Tip 1. Yes, sir. That's the question I get most often, right? What's the valuation? Is there a magic formula, right? Is there some math that you can do in advance to kind of predetermine what the value of your company is? My experience is there's no secret formula. We got probably 3 different offers along the way to acquire my company, and I can tell you the offers were dramatically different from each other. The offer we accepted in the end was 10x what the first offer was, and I'm telling you, there's no formula to it. So some people think it's a factor. When you're in a recurring revenue model, it might be some multiplier of revenue. Sometimes it's a multiplier of your net income, right? Really, it gets down to does the acquiring company appreciate and respect the recurring revenue model? Because as you guys know, I'm assuming, I don't want to assume, let me ask, who in the room has a recurring revenue model in their business right now? Most? Out of you folks who in the room, the recurring revenue is the dominant portion of your revenue, your overall total revenue? Okay. So as a recurring revenue business, you should be valued higher than just an old school kind of VAR business, a product sale business, right? But if it's a product sale VAR company that might be acquiring you, they may not respect and understand the power of that recurring revenue. and that offer may come in too low. So no magic formula. That's why you got to go through the negotiations. Okay, let's get on to tip number 2. Educate yourself on the process. Attend a seminar, right? Get some advice along the way. You guys have all done a good job of embracing that first point. Try to understand what pitfalls to look out for. Number 3 is an important one. Understand the difference between an asset sale and a share sale. Can somebody explain to me the difference between those two things before I give the definition? What's an asset sale? Assets are tangible pieces of a company. Shares are shares in the entire organization. So here's what I mean. Really important to understand this difference here. In an asset sale, they're buying pieces of your company. Usually a customer base is a piece, right? That's the main thing that somebody buying your company wants to go after. They want to own your customers, own the revenue associated with those customers so they can acquire them as their own customers. In an asset sale, they may buy your customers, but they may not buy your office space. If you've got, they're just buying pieces. So in other words, any expenses that you're incurring as a business right now, they don't want those. Your monthly rent doesn't come over in the deal, all right? Your monthly, whatever utilities fees, if you have a data center, you've got data center expenses, any equipment, any office furniture, any other pieces, likely will not come over in an asset sale. They just want a piece. Usually it's a customer base, like I said, and they leave everything else behind. It's up to you to do what you want with those remaining pieces. In a share purchase, they're literally buying your entire company and everything that goes along with it, all your obligations, all your debt, everything that's a part of your company goes over in a share sale, does not go over in an asset sale. Is that clear? Let me give you a little bit more specific on that. In my particular experience, when I sold my company, it was an asset sale. They bought my customer base, they bought the revenue that went with it. They were not interested in my employees. That payroll does not come over in the deal. All right? I had a data center. I had, technology stacked up in that data center. That was not part of the deal. I was on the hook to get rid of all that stuff or continue, wind down whatever it was on my expense to wind down that stuff. Now, fortunately for me, we were the first Canadian company that they acquired. So coincidentally, they needed my office space because they didn't have an office in Canada. So we negotiated my office, debt obligation into the deal. Coincidentally, they needed a data center because they didn't have a data center in Canada. So they took over my data center obligation. Coincidentally, they needed equipment. They took over all my, equipment purchases and everything like that. So just out of circumstance, we included those things in the deal. But the next Canadian company they acquired, they didn't need any of that stuff. So it was up to that owner to, on their own expense, kind of do whatever they wanted to do. Employees don't usually come over in an asset sale. Coincidentally, they needed a few employees because they didn't have any Canadian employees. All the future Canadian acquisitions they didn't want any of the employees. So it was up to the owner to dismantle the staff at that point. You guys understand what I'm talking about here? Asset sale versus a share sale. So, as you're trying to determine what the ideal situation is for you, you need to make a decision on what's the best outcome. Now, the good thing with an asset sale is you get a check up front, right? They write you a check, and then it's up to you to kind of wind down all the other expenses. But that could be a good scenario for you, right? Because the number may be right at that point. But those are some of the things that you need to take into consideration here. How long will it take? So sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow, right? Usually it's months, a few months at least, usually many, many months. So try and understand how long that process is going to take. and understand what information you'll need to provide to go through the due diligence process, because it's a big financial exercise, right? So try and understand in advance what information you need to have ready to make the process move smoothly. Let me pause there for a minute. Do you guys have questions on any of these points? Yep.
I've seen or had an indirect kind of experience of seeing how people sell organisations prior. The how long will it take thing always seems to be a lot longer than they expected, and the terms change. Is that your experience as well, that the actual the acquirer kind of literally their initial offer just gets reduced and reduced and reduced because they know you're on the hook? How do you deal with that?
The time frame is usually directly tied to how organized both parties are. All right, so it's some of you guys have a very organized business. I'm sure you do. Some of you guys maybe not so much, right? On both sides. So if both sides are very organized, it can move quickly. If you're prepared, the paperwork goes back and forth, right? The assessments go back and forth, and then it's weeks, usually a couple months at least, until you get a decision. If both sides are disorganized, it can take a long time. And also what the motivation is to acquire. Sometimes there's a timeline that that both companies are working towards, where there's an urgency to get a deal done. But it's it's all how motivated and how organized both sides are that determine how long it takes. Other questions? Let's move on. Tip number 3. Focus on your financials. Get a healthy P&L. You want to maximize the sale price? Get your P&L in a healthy state. Set some revenue goals before you sell, right? Get to a certain point to maximize your evaluation. Get organized. I already said that. Get your debt under control. All right? Especially if you end up in an asset sale, right? Remember the asset sale versus the purchase sale? Asset sale, you get a check, but you keep the debt. They don't want the debt. They give you a check, they take your customers, you're stuck with your debt. Get your debt in a manageable state, because if it ends up becoming an asset sale, not a share sale, then you're stuck with the debt. And trust me, if your debt's too high, all the profit that you think you're going to get is going to get washed away trying to pay off your existing debt. Get your AR under control, your accounts receivable, right? Just administratively make sure that you're keeping up, everything's organized, your customers are paying on time, you're in a good financial state, you're not underwater with your line of credit. Keep the cash flowing during this entire time and increase your profitability. Focus on your profitability. Sometimes there's a funny assumption in the tech business that lots of tech companies get bought and sold, never being profitable, right? All about the future potential of the business. That may be true, but I know one thing that's absolutely true. The more profitable you are, the more valuable you are. So focus on profit, get your debt down, keep your cash flowing, all right, and get yourself organized. Questions on this tip? So far, does this stuff seem like common sense? Because it kind of is, right? It kind of is. It's smart business. Let me get on to tip number 4. Get a rock solid administrative team in place. This may be the best tip of the whole day here. Hands up. Who has an insourced administrative team? Your own employees are managing your payables and your invoices and your bookkeeping activities. Insourced. Okay. You're outsourcing this to a third party? Who in the room? Okay. Sounds like mostly insourced. Let me ask you guys a question. Why did you choose to insource your administrative functions versus farming it out to a third party? Somebody explain? What motivated the decision to insource? The answer this gentleman gave was to keep more control over the financials, right? More control over the administration. Somebody else, why did you choose to insource, right? Hire employees to manage your administrative functions. Yep. Okay. Very good. So closer communication loop was the answer here, right? Okay. The folks who said they outsourced this to a third party, can you guys tell me why you decided to do that? Yep. Okay. Not a core competency was the answer up here. Anybody else who outsources to a third party? Cost effective to outsource? Okay. My opinion is it doesn't really matter which one you do, but have control, visibility, access to your administration, right? And be able to inspect it. You got to have competent people managing your books. Hire the best administrators possible. Sometimes companies in this space, and I've been doing this a long time, tend to cheap out when it comes to administration, right? Hire cheap talent, bare minimum cost, right? Junior people, because it's only administration, it's only bookkeeping. How tough can it be, right? I'm telling you, upgrade your expectations on what that team can do for you. They can make your life miserable if they're messy, and they can make your business run very, very smooth if they're very good. So hire the best people you can, ensure everything's up to date all the time. Automate your administrative tasks. Automate. You guys are MSPs. You sell technology to customers. You sell automation to your customers. You should do yourselves a favor and make sure your bookkeeping and administrative functions are as automated as possible, right? Makes it more accurate, makes it more easy, less people, less labor burden, right? Automate. Use as many tools as you can. Ingram Micro Cloud Marketplace integrates directly into QuickBooks and ConnectWise and those other PSA tools, right? Make sure everything's automated here. Don't rely on manual processes. When it comes time to go down that road of acquisition, understand that your administrative team, whether it's insourced or outsourced, is going to be very busy and very tied up during this process. All right, so the acquiring company is going to want to see all of your books, probably going back several years, right? All your income statements, all your invoices, all the AR, and you're going to have to produce that documentation to the company so they can do their own assessments. If it takes you a long time and it's very difficult to get that stuff, usually an indication that your business is not very well maintained from an administrative and financial perspective. If it's nice and easy and you get that, you can get that information over quickly, it'll speed up the whole process and de-stress the entire experience. That make sense? Don't underestimate this point. Your administrative team has to be excellent. Otherwise, you're going to see all kinds of trouble. Yep.
Kind of linked point to your previous tip 3. I've been quite close to one of these. As well as the admin team, is the owner or owners will be very busy, so unavailable potentially. And then that goes to maybe one of your next tips, which is who knows what, when. That can be a very difficult moment.
For sure, yeah, and you're right. They are kind of tying together here. The administrative team will be completely busy during this entire process. The ownership, the leaders of your company will probably be very busy during the entire process. Third party, professional services that you rely on, accountants, lawyers, that sort of thing will be brought into this process, obviously. So they're going to be busy during this. So there's a lot of moving pieces here, and really the tips I'm trying to give you are not just to maximize the outcome of this process, get your sale price as high as it should be, but I'm also giving you advice on how to make this a not stress-free. Trust me, it'll be stressful. Trust me, it's going to be stressful. but as stress-free as possible, as smooth, and as short as possible. All right, so the worst thing that can happen here is it drags on and on and on, ties you up, ties up your administrative team. You start to take your eye off the ball of your business, all right, because you're busy in boardrooms on phone calls with lawyers and the other company. Many months of this, and the deal falls apart, 6 months later, because they do. And now you're stuck trying to rescue your business, which you've been distracted for the last 6 months. You don't want that to happen here. Let me give you tip number 5. Identify potential suitors in advance and get friendly with them. All right? Don't just leave it to chance. Don't leave it to a bar conversation in South Beach, Miami to find your potential suitor. Scope this out in advance. Figure out who might be the best fit to acquire your business. Is it a local competitor? You probably already know these guys. Maybe it's worth getting friendly with them. Is it a competitor but maybe in another geography who would be a strategic complement to purchase your business? Maybe it's not a competitor. Maybe it's a complementary company where they don't have your particular expertise and you represent the next logical expansion for them. Whatever it is, your businesses are all different, but put some thought into this. Who might be a good company to acquire you, and reach out and get friendly with them. You never know. Those friendly conversations might lead to something. You guys, how many members of the audience are a member of our TrustX community, Ingram Micro TrustX? A couple? So for those who may not be aware, Ingram Micro TrustX is our community of resellers, not cloud specific, just Ingram Micro specific. So it's a group that you can belong to, and the community that we've built. And there's events during the year and lots of interaction between those members here. I can't tell you how many times Ingram Micro TrustX partners have acquired each other. All right, they get to know them over a number of years. They get familiar with their business. They spend a lot of time in meetings, a lot of time at social events, and they get familiar with each other. And guess what happens? They start to have an appreciation for the other person's business, and one thing leads to another, bam, another acquisition. Happens all the time. So one of the best things we can offer you at Ingram Micro is a community of like-minded partners who are probably going after the same goals and objectives, right? We can get you introduced. So what do they look like? Are they local? They're out of the region? Do you already know this company, or maybe you've got to do some research to figure out who it might be? And just make the effort to build a relationship. It may not lead to anywhere, it may lead to something, right? You never know, but put a bit of effort in, and it also gives you an opportunity to choose your destiny a little bit versus getting a phone call out of the blue from a stranger. Questions on this tip? Finally, don't lose focus on your day-to-day business. All right? Do not stop selling. It's tempting. It's exciting when you get into merger and acquisition discussions to pause what you're doing day-to-day and put all your energy into this negotiation. I'm telling you, don't do it. You've got to juggle both balls. You've got to multitask. Your business will suffer as you start paying attention to the negotiations. The process will take longer than you expect, no matter how long, and the deal may fall through. All right? I went through 3 separate negotiation acquisition discussions with 3 separate companies over about a 3-year period until I finally found the ideal scenario for me, and when we did the deal. But I've been through it 3 times, and the first 2 times, again, I was at risk for kind of taking my eye off the ball, putting my energy into something that eventually didn't end up happening. So it can be very tempting to put all your energy into this acquisition thing, but you've got to multitask, keep the business running, keep the cash flowing, in case it doesn't work out. You guys have negotiated enough business deals over the years. I know you understand not every deal comes to fruition here. So make sure that your business stays healthy during this entire process. Bonus tip, talk to Ingram Micro. So I just told you about our TrustX community, right? So I can introduce you to, a number of partners. Anybody at Ingram, we have a community of thousands upon tens of thousands of resellers that we can introduce you to who may be in the same boat that you guys are, right? Maybe may have the same goals and objectives. Use us to, increase your ability to network with your peers. We've also got a number of people like me who have been through this process in the past. We can connect you up with a variety of people who can give you great advice on this. So pull us in. We can, we'll help you however we can. We'll give you the very best advice we can. It's in our best interest that you guys thrive and continue to grow and continue to, build your successful businesses. So we want to help you do this. I can think of a number of companies that we've gotten very involved in their acquisitions and, to some extent even funded some of the acquisitions through some creative financing and stuff that we've been able to do. So if you're not sure, pull us in, kind of explain to us, walk us through what your strategy is, and we may be able to get very creative with you from a financing perspective to help make this an easy experience for you. And that are the end of my tips. But I can stick around. We got 15 more minutes or so to keep talking if you want. I didn't want to get too long and too deep with this, but then again, maybe some of the best points are going to come out of the Q&A that we're about to get into. So, yes, sir. Yeah, I don't have any experience with go shop periods. So to be honest with you, I don't really have any advice one way or the other. In some scenarios they may be good. I can't really comment on it. Sorry. Other questions? Yep. Question is, did we hire somebody to help us with this process, or did we just manage it ourselves? We managed it ourselves. We were approached a couple of times by some consultants who offered to, for a cut of the deal, kind of package things up for us and pretty us up and put us out to market. We talked with some of those companies. We did not ultimately end up hiring them, probably because we weren't actively marketing ourselves to be sold, right? We were building a business. We were successful. And the opportunities just came our way, so we weren't aggressively trying to get sold. So that's why I don't think we really dove in with those companies. But again, if you follow, and it sounds like I'm trying to sell you guys something, if you follow my tips, you probably don't need to hire somebody to go market you. But then again, it's completely up to you. I don't know your specific scenarios. Some of these people can offer very great advice and get you the best deal. Yes, sir. Question is, do we have a board? We didn't. We're a pretty small organization, so we had, again, people offered to kind of be board advisory members. We tried to keep it real simple. Yep. Did I have any regrets? Absolutely not. For me personally, it was the right time to sell. So, I'd owned the company coming up on 10 years, for various reasons. So, we were selling cloud services, and at that time, cloud backup was a big part of our portfolio. And at that time, the cloud backup market was getting consolidated and the pricing was starting to come down. So the profitability was coming down. We just felt like it was a good time to get out of the business. Plus, if I'm openly candid with you, at another shareholder in the company that we started to butt heads on some things. So kind of personal relationships kind of led us to a point where this was a good thing for us to part ways anyway. So everything kind of landed at the right place at the right time for us. Did it, loved the experience, made my money on it and moved on to the next thing, which ended up being Ingram Micro, which has been a fantastic experience for me. So for a lot of reasons, it worked out perfectly for me, and I have no regrets. Yep. Good question. I can't really comment on other regions and cultural, business practices. I know in the USA and Canada, mergers and acquisitions happen all the time, right? Every day, so it's very common business practice. So I can't really say in other regions of the world, but I can't imagine it would be much different. I mean, there still are M&As happening all over, so follow the tips, and you'll create a scenario for yourself. Maybe it's not even in your region. Maybe you've got to, promote your business in another region to achieve that. So think about that. Yep.
So obviously, I know you said you were a smaller business, but how do you manage like the staff communication? Obviously, if you are looking to sell and you're looking to meet with people, obviously that people can question their jobs, and especially if it's someone that can sell. How do you kind of manage that internally? And also then, if the staff moves on as part of the deal, what's your thoughts on that? Or their livelihoods?
Is your question, was our staff aware that these discussions were going on? Sure. Yeah. So staff was not aware. It's not something we made public, right? So any negotiations, we kept them confidential, if for no other reason, because 2 of the 3 deals fell through and they never ended up happening, right? So no sense stressing people out about something that may or may not happen. Remember my other tip: keep the business going in the meantime. Don't slow down, right? So you really don't want to distract your employees. That's my advice to you: is keep this confidential, because they'll know when the time is right. And when it comes time to making that decision, are the employees going over in the deal, or are they potentially being let go? I mean, that's a very personal decision for you as the owner and manager of these people. But for the acquiring company, the employees may or may not be important to them. So, you just got to make the best decision that you can at the time. Hopefully your people get looked after in both scenarios. If they're moving over, hopefully they move over and they have successful careers with the new company. If they're not moving over, hopefully you're taking care of them on their exit and they're landing in a good spot. So, some of that's within your control, some of it's not. But the question about communication is just, we try to be as open and clear with the communication as possible at the appropriate time. Yep. Is this advice to the owner of your company, or? Yeah. It's got to align with their personal and financial goals, right, and their business goals. So I don't think you can force anybody to do anything. They've got to understand what their goals are on their timeline. And I'm not saying it always works out on their timeline. Sometimes things happen suddenly and it's the right thing. But it's just about making sure that the business owners kind of have the plan and are ready for that right opportunity. When you're prepared in advance, when you do the things that I've talked about, right, kind of write down your goals, rock solid administration, get your finances in order. When you're prepared like that, you can react quickly to something coming along, right? What the last thing you want to do is bump into somebody in a bar in South Beach who is ready to make an offer to you, and you're scrambling because you don't have all of these things ready, and 6 months later you're still upside down trying to get yourself organized, and then they move on to the next thing because they discover you're not the company they want to buy anyways. So do these things, get prepared in advance, and you'll be ready for anything that comes your way. Anybody else? We're done. Pub crawl starts at 6. See you guys. Have a great night and enjoy the rest of your event. Thanks for coming out today. I really appreciate it.